You're muted, Rob.
All right, if you'll give me just a moment, I'll get us started. And so we have started the recording. Tonight's meeting is being recorded like all of our virtual meetings are. For taking public comment tonight, we will take public comment in one of four ways. Someone could drop something off at the blue box out in front of the Township building, mark public comment for tonight's meeting, and we would read it into the record. As far as I understand, we do not have any public comment this evening. From that way. If someone is attending the meeting, they can raise their hands. At this point, we don't have any attendees other than those who are on the committee. They could either raise their hands via Zoom raise your hand virtually or by phone. There's an option to do that as well. In addition, we will check to make sure there's no public comment at the public comment email address, which is public comment, all one word, at newtowntownship.org. Again, that's public comment at newtowntownship.org. And I will turn the meeting back over to you, Tom.
Okay, so call to order. I'll say aye. Present.
At 6:33.
I call the net committee member names. Let's see, Carol. Present.
Hi.
Rob.
Present here.
John. John, you there?
It's on mute.
There. Yeah, he's raising his hand.
Okay. Trish.
I'm here.
All right. It's everybody. And I'm here.
Okay.
All right, so then I announce, can we approve tonight's agenda?
It's tonight's agenda.
So I'll pull it up so everybody can see it a little bit better.
I'll second it.
Okay, thanks.
Then we're open to discuss the first item on the agenda.
Which is my minutes.
Which is your minutes, Carol's minutes. Any
I
comment?
had help from Suzanne, but I still can't figure it out. So until I get it figured out, I'm at least typing them up.
I read them and they look good to me.
Oh, thank you.
Any public comment on the minutes?
Again, we don't have any public
No?
attending the meeting at this point, so I think you're in good shape.
Okay. So then we approved the minutes for tonight. And there's no public comment, so we call a vote. All in favor, say aye or nay.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion granted. Someone make a motion to complete the topic?
I'll make the motion to complete.
Second.
Second.
I second.
All right, then we can move to our next item on the agenda. Is that let's see, new business?
So yeah, it'll be under new business. Tonight, you don't have any presentations that I know of.
Okay.
And as of right now, we don't have any permits
Okay.
for this group. I think we're still getting, people used to the fact that they have to do that if they're going to be taking down trees. And so it'll probably be a little bit before we really start getting a bunch of those, but.
Okay.
Okay.
So then we move on to a discussion about any changes the committee wants to make to the ordinance. Is that right?
Yep.
Sure.
All right. Does anybody have any changes they would like to make?
Yeah, what is the actual tree amount you have to do in order to put a permit in? And where is it located? I know like Springfield is like front yard setback, like anything from the front of the house forward. Does this include the whole property? And I know Radnor is 12 inches or more, 6. If you have six trees, 12 inches or more, you have to apply for a permit and stuff like that. If you're taking down one tree, do you still, like, say, backyard, do you still have to apply for a permit under this ordinance?
I don't think so. Let me,
Unless it's a heritage tree, but we don't have any heritage trees because we have to, from what I read, we have to make it a heritage tree. Correct?
We have to, the township's in the process of identifying all of them, aren't they?
Who is?
well, that would be up for you guys to help.
We have to.
identify those, yes.
We have to. Okay.
I think that Cindy Mahalo and Sheila O'Sullivan Feeney from the Environmental Advisory Council have started that process. And I believe that they're waiting for you guys to get your feet grounded before they start looping you or a few of you in on that. So what I can do is I'll follow up with both of them and see where they are. And Tom and Trish, I'll give them your email addresses and you guys can figure out who the two are that you want to have working with them. Because again, because of Sunshine Act, we can't have more than 2 on there.
Right.
Leonard, what are their names again?
The first one is Cindy Mahalo. I think it's Mehollow. And then the second one is Sheila O'Sullivan Feeney. You can usually find her at the Sons of American Italy meetings. Just kidding.
You're so bad.
Bad joke, huh, Steve? But I'll touch base with both of them and see where they are on it.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a process in place that for the public to submit for if they think that they have a heritage tree, and how would they go about having it listed as a heritage tree if they wanted to?
I do not believe there's a process specifically in place for it. But we can, I mean, that would be something that I would think that this group could design and say, this is the process that we would like. I mean, so a lot of what's going to happen is going to be things that that you kind of set in place and set in motion. You're very fortunate in that you're being inaugural. You guys get to kind of, lay the foundation for us. I mean, we've gotten you kind of gotten started, but we put into the ordinance that it's there, but there's not a lot of meat behind all of it in regards to how we actually carry it out.
Yeah, that to me seems to be the biggest issue that I have with the ordinance, because there's a lot of ambiguous language in there that can be interpreted multiple ways, and things aren't always defined. Like what is considered like a, hold on.
A heritage tree?
No, I think that one is pretty clear, but what is considered a large canopy tree? And so I would think that, that needs to be defined. There's a lot of things in here that I've noted that,
What page is that?
Very hard to enforce. And I think it's unclear for the public if they're reading through it to understand exactly what they're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. So I kind of think that's one of the first things we would need to do. And maybe, and I think it's too much for one of these meetings, and maybe a couple of us can break out, just into a group of 2 and maybe go through it a little more. I don't know. I was just throwing that out there as an idea.
Yeah. Maybe one of the things that you ought to look at tonight is maybe talk about some of the things that you think are important to address. And then maybe, depending on how big the group, how big of it is maybe assign different folks to tackle different pieces of it. And, if you do it in teams of 2, it's not an issue. If you want to have other meetings, I mean, I'm more than happy to advertise and schedule as many meetings as you want. But obviously, we don't want to make this overburdensome for you either. So, whatever makes the most sense.
Well, I kind of am of the opinion that we kind of need to get the ordinance kind of in shape so that we know what we're doing.
Yeah, no, I think that's important.
How true.
And procedures, because there's a lot of, I have no idea how we're actually supposed to fulfill these tasks that we've been, the duties that are like on page 7. It's like, I'm not sure how we're supposed to do a lot of these things, for instance. And I don't know how it aligns or what exactly the township's procedures are, either.
What's that, Trish, for the type of trees you're talking about?
No, it says, so if you look on page 7 of the ordinance,
Right.
it says duties. It's
Yeah.
like the, so let's see, like the commission may periodically conduct a survey of heritage trees. Like periodically can be what? I think it should be set. There should be a time frame. Either we're going to do it at a minimum annually or biannually. And how do we know where they are? So do we have a mapping system? Is there, does the township have a GPS, or GIS layers and things like that? And so are we going to be, logging where these trees are on the property? And especially for the private property owners, I think that's going to be really important to know exactly, where is the boundary where the street tree is. I'm still kind of really fuzzy on that. So,
well, a street tree would be, I know with Springfield, there is whatever their right of way is off the center line of the street. The township has sort of like a right of way, or an easement. I don't know if that's exactly what it's called, but down in Springfield, they consider it anything from the front yard setback of the house is considered a street tree. Or any tree that can, even though it's on the back, like say on the side of the house, any tree that can encroach that area is considered under their jurisdiction.
So I think for like the normal homeowner, that might be a tough, it may be difficult for them to know exactly where that line is and how to measure that. So maybe there's a way that we can provide some guidance on how to determine that. And I don't know if there's a layer in the GIS system in the township that shows where those setbacks are, where those boundaries are, where the right of way is.
I trust me, I've been in court with Springfield over this thing. And do you know what the codes people say? That's not our thing to do it. It's you. Everyone's different. Every street's different. Every part of the township's different. You have to know it's not just because you're ignorant to the law doesn't mean it's not there. That's what I got.
I hear you,
that
but
doesn't surprise me.
That's not right. I mean, we need to provide, the public with a little more than if that is the case. And if that's the way the township feels, then at least you need to give some guidance on how to calculate that.
I mean, I think on the infancy of this thing, we should do it like the trees that are in the front yard setback along the streets and everything, like anything from the front of the house forward is considered a street tree. Like, I know that's simple and stuff like that if you're going to take down a tree there, you get a permit. Like stuff that's in the backyard, Springfield doesn't care about that too much. Now this ordinance says like if you have a heritage tree back there, like if a homeowner designates that or calls, or, the township sees it, makes it a heritage tree, then you need a permit to take it down.
So, all
Now,
right.
which
let me-
I've gone through where they've told the people no, and they cut it down anyway and just pay the fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so that happens. Well, so let me ask you this. So we have a dead tree, or had a dead tree. It was a willow. It was one of those, it was a cherry willow. It died, and it's next to our house. It's in the front yard technically. So I would have had to get a permit to cut down a dead tree.
Yes. Because they want to know it's gone, first off. They want to make sure the contractor has.
We
the
did it
proper insurance.
ourselves.
What's that?
We did it ourselves.
You still need it. You still need it in Springfield, technically. If they catch you, you need a permit to do it, because they want you to replace that tree if it's taken down from the front set. They want a street tree in everybody's front yard in Springfield, at least one
Well,
tree.
All right, so this is, so I have probably on our property, in our front yard, we have, oh my God, close to 20 trees. So is
Okay.
there a limit? So
That's what we're,
applies to me?
like Springfield, they want you, if you cut down that tree, they want you to replace that tree. Because obviously, like if you say you had that tree died, and then the rest of your trees in your front yard are ashes or something, or oaks that are getting that are susceptible to other things, they want you to start replacing that canopy as they die.
Mhm.
Do you understand?
Ashes are
Just be-
excluded, though.
What's that?
White ash are excluded from this regulation.
But I understand that, but I understand that if you have, I have customers that have, that's all they have is ash trees on their property. Now they're treating for the ash borer, but just because it's an ash doesn't mean you shouldn't get a replacement tree, 1 for 1 or something, I'm not
Okay.
saying if it's a big ash tree that you should put 6 trees on your property. You should at least get 1 tree if one's being taken down. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I don't think that the ordinance
I know.
said that.
I know, but we can change the ordinance.
Well, but it's my understanding, so, I just think that this is going to be kind of burdensome for property owners. I could see about regulating the street trees in someone's front yard if it's within the right of way. But if it's not in the right of way,
Like the rear yard, like Springfield doesn't care.
right,
Exactly.
but what does,
Unless it's a
unless
heritage.
Yeah,
I
but
don't know
what
how
does
they
our
always-
township say though? That's what I'm just confused. It's just,
I think if you look at our ordinance, and it says that if you need a permit to plant or cut down any tree, or street tree or public tree. And if we go and look at the definition of street, I'll say it easier, street tree. Any tree that's within the right of way of a public street or highway in the township, excluding state highways. So that's our definition. So
Right.
it would be what's in the right of way. The
Exactly.
challenge that I think is a fair challenge that you brought up, Trish, earlier, was how does a person know what the right of way is? Because in one neighborhood or even on a particular street, it may be as little as 15 feet, or it could be as much as 30 feet, depending on where the road is and what's happening. So it is a challenge. That's one of the things that becomes a little bit more difficult, and that's why Bob has gone and they've said you have to prove what it is, because the township doesn't necessarily even know what every one of our right-of-ways are.
so how is that even enforceable? How are
It is a challenge. I'm going to tell you right now. It's one of those things. It's easy for me if they're within 5 feet of the roadway it's most likely going to be within the right of way. It's not even an issue.
Right.
It's for somebody that has, their house is 100 feet off the roadway. Is that first 25 feet it, or is it only 15 feet? And it depends on what road you're on. And so, and it depends, and in some cases, it depends on where on the road you're on. And that's the challenge. And that's where, on some level, the Springfield opportunity works a little bit easier in that it says anything that's basically in the front yard. That's an easy define. Everybody knows what that is. But I think you're right. I think most people would say that's overburdensome.
It is.
Well, they're going, like Springfield is, I'm considering front yard setback. They're talking their normal homes. It's like 50 foot off curb line, which is usually to the front of the houses. Like around Rolling Green Golf Course, and any of the small neighborhoods. Now we're talking about houses that are like flag lots and stuff like that, or whatever, usually it's, it can be a little bit further. I mean, I did a job one time, it was 75 foot to the front of the house, and there were trees that were big poplars that I were taking down, and the township stopped me and I had to go get the permit. And I'm like, your ordinance says this, and they're like, just get it. Pay the $25, make them happy. And I'm like, all right. So the codes guy says, go fill it out and bring it to me, and I'll give you the money, And I says, just go fill it out if that makes you happy, I mean, it's just, but under us, this being new, we can designate what we want now. We can always change it, make an amendment to it later on if it doesn't seem like it's working, but right now I would say, consider it a front yard setback is, from the front of the house forward.
I can't support
That certainly makes it easier.
it.
I
Does
mean, that
make
makes it easier.
but
I mean, that's why there's no, I mean, you can designate it a large canopy tree. Like in Springfield, if I prune a dogwood or like a small, like Quonset cherry, they want a permit for that. They don't care,
Land one?
I mean,
Well,
if you cut down,
Why don't we
a
do
dogwood,
the front of the front of the house, but not more than 50 feet? Something like that?
you could do that.
So
so
these people with big lots are not locked in?
yeah, I mean, I have 2 acres, and so and I just keep bringing up my situation just because I'm reading this ordinance as a homeowner trying to understand how I'm supposed to,
Uh-huh.
that's why I'm bringing up my particular situation. So, to me, I mean, I have 2 acres. I have a ton of trees on the property. We've just over the last year have planted probably 30 trees. I mean, they're going to be big trees. And so for us taking down one dead tree and to have to get a permit for that just doesn't seem to make sense to me, especially when it's one that's technically you could say it's sort of the front but side yard. It's very kind of on the border of that.
Uh-huh.
And then if I have to get a permit for every tree, I'm just looking at it from a workload standpoint from this committee. I do not want to be reviewing a million permits for somebody to take down a tree that's dead in their front yard. I just don't have the time for that.
In Springfield, I bet you I put 2-3 permits a week at some point. That's like I got 2 or 3 right now pending in Springfield.
Hey, Bob,
That
does every one of those go back before the Shade Tree Commission?
no, they just go through the township. The parks guy, Frank Papa, goes around and looks at it himself. Goes in the office and drives around and looks at it and says, okay, approves it, and that's it. That's what he does. I mean, that's his job. He's parking recs, and that's what part of his job is looking around for the permits for Shade Tree Commission. Unless it's, like we should only be involved with this if it's a heritage tree, our say, otherwise the township, it should just be written in the ordinance that if you want to take it down, like you can write anything you want. Down in Springfield, I could say, like, if they had a big oak tree and someone wants to take it down, all you got to say it's interfering with the sewer line and the tree's going to come. What are they going to say? No, you can't take it down, that your sewer be ruined, you know? Or the sidewalks getting jacked up. I mean, I've never, only once or twice heard that Springfield deny a permit for a takedown. I mean, they do pruning too. If you prune a tree, they make you get a permit.
Yeah, some prunings in here too. What is the permit fee for,
Springfield's $25.
what is it for us?
I don't know. I don't think it's anything.
We haven't
Springfield used to be
decided yet.
free. Springfield used to be free, and then they went to like $5. Then they raised it to 25. And I heard that the codes guy told me like a few weeks ago that they finally went online. You could apply for the permit online. Now, I don't know if they accept credit cards or not online, but you know, because it was a pain in the butt for me. Like, I'd make the customers get them now. I used to run down at the end of the day, fill all my permits out, hand them in, gave the money, you know, and then recoup it off when I did the tree work, you know. But anymore, I just tell the customers they have to get it. You know, it's required. You got to get it to do it, to take it down, you know. So I don't know. Steve, is there a permit fee for this?
I'm looking up right now. I thought we passed one, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm looking. Leonard, do you remember?
I don't, Steve. I don't think that we passed one.
Maybe we
think-
didn't pass one. We may have just talked about it.
I think that, because if I remember, and I don't have the ordinance in front of me, I tried finding it in my on my desk. But my understanding is I thought that was going to be established when they created the permit, which would be, you know, on the administrative side of this.
I think the easiest thing to do would be, in my personal opinion, let it be free at first. So people are like, oh, it's cost me money to do it. Well, just apply for the permit. You know what I mean? So we get people in the, you know, the idea of that you need a permit to do it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And can you,
Instead of, you know, charging for it and then people saying, you know, I'm not paying more money to the township for something that we never had to just because they made this ordinance. But if you make it free at first, you know, then, you know, people are more likely to say, and especially if you had it online or something, they could just apply for it online. Then your process of people will be more likely for them to say what they're doing. Correct or no?
how enforceable is it? They're just going to do it or they don't do it. There's no teeth to it if it's free.
Well, we could make a penalty for not filing it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that makes sense.
Well, wasn't there a
We could-
penalty for doing the work without it? Ain't there?
Well,
isn't there
usually
something-
if you do work without a permit, it's double the permit fee. And so
Well, I
if-
think,
if
and in
the-
here, isn't it like $600? Well, I know Springfield, 600 per occurrence. Like if someone cut down a tree in Springfield and didn't get the permit and was like totally like bad about it, it's $600 per offense, can be, up to.
And so there is a fines and enforcement section here, and I thought it was around 500. Oh, here it is.
Well, yeah,
What
it
page,
says
Trish?
each violation can be not more than $1,000.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, I was looking at the prior removal. This is the escrow, sorry.
Yeah.
What page are we on?
Page 17.
Page 17.
18, 17, whatever. I'm not sure.
Middle of 17. $500 escrow.
Yeah, but it's for each violation of this chapter, the landowner shall be fined not more than $1,000 plus all court costs.
I think this escrow thing is more for land builders and stuff, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, but I'm looking at section 5.
The next page over.
158.14 fines and penalties. That's at the bottom. It says for each violation of this chapter, the landowner shall be fined not more than $1,000 plus court costs. It doesn't say what a per tree.
Like I know in Springfield, it's not per tree, it's like per incident. Or per, put it this way, per address.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because
And
I
that's
did,
what this is.
because I did a job at a shopping center down in Springfield and it was 3 different addresses, so they fined me 3 different times.
So I don't know. So one of the things that I'm just want to be mindful of with this is that I think that when we're talking about developers, that's a different story than what we're talking about existing homeowners. And I thought that when I'm reading through the ordinance and that the purpose of the ordinance was to preserve those trees that are in the right of way, in the public right of way, the public trees, and that it wasn't so much about what was on the interior of someone's property and limiting their property rights in a sense to require them to go in to get a permit to cut down any tree that's more or less in their property, depending on the size. Because if we go by some of the things that we're talking about here, I mean, that could be pretty almost like somebody's entire yard. And, I don't think that that's really what the purpose of this is. It's to preserve those trees along the right of way, along our roads, to ensure that shade canopy, preserve the heritage trees, and then also to look at when a large developer comes in to make sure that we get the adequate replacement and have the establishment of those shade trees back into those developed areas. I mean, in all honesty, I think that's sort of where we need to focus. I mean, that's sort of my thought on it, because I think it would be tough to get buy-in from the public on this. This is a brand new thing. I think they're going to feel like it's an overreach. And honestly, I would feel more comfortable just sticking within the right of way. And if we can give homeowners some estimate of how to figure that out for their situation or on their road, I think that would be helpful. And then, always within, if we just say within 35 feet, come in and ask and at least contact the township to see if your tree does qualify. I'd rather go that route than just have a blanket, you have to come in and get a permit to do it. And I do understand like the whole replacing of the tree. I mean, even in our situation, we will be replacing it. We just got to get the stump out and we'll be planting a new tree in the fall, in the spring. But, I just think it's a little, I was reading this in a different way, that it was all about what was along the roads, not necessarily we were all that concerned about what people were doing in the interior of their property.
Unless, I think, I agree with you, 35, 50 feet, whatever it is, we decide. Like the houses on Tyson Road or whatever, I think most of those are like 50 foot off. If you did 50 foot, I think you're pretty secure.
Mm-hmm. Off the center line?
No, off the curb edge or whatever. 50 foot is pretty good. A lot of houses, flag lots. I don't know where you live in the township, but
I'm on Gradyville Road, near the corner of Bishop Hollow and Gradyville Road.
Yeah, so I mean, your setback could be 130 feet, off the road. I don't know how far you're actually off the road, but the house. But 50 feet is is good, I think. And like I said, if the permit fee at this time was free, and if the codes guy goes around and see someone cutting a tree and say, stops the tree guy and says, you know, there's a new ordinance. You have to not fine anybody for cutting it down at that point in time and say, you have to apply for a permit at this point on. So he's been, you know, I know Springfield, they carry around a book. You have to make sure all your insurance information's in the township, your workman's comp information, your liability insurance. I mean, it's protecting you as a homeowner too.
Mhm.
You know, I pay a lot of insurance a year. I mean, I pay workman's comp on my guys. I pay 30 cents on a dollar for they make. Every $30 they make, I pay 30 cents. So, you know, it doesn't bother me at all for me to send that to a township, you know. You know, I pay the state a lot of money for workman's comp, you know, and my liability insurance is huge, you know, for tree work and stuff. So I don't mind at all. I mean, these guys that don't have it, it's a different story. You know, they should be worried, but they should have it. They're crazy for, you know, stuff happens so quick, you know, on jobs. And if they don't have the insurance, typically they're going to sue the homeowner. You know, if the guy gets hurt, God forbid, killed on your property, and the employer doesn't have it, the workman's comp, they're going to sue your homeowners, the family or whatever. So, I mean, it's a protection thing all around, you know?
Yeah,
So,
I spend a lot of money, or I spend a lot of money on tree work because I'm in charge of this 24-acre, the outside of this 24-acre estate, which is just loaded with white ash. And I always ask to see their insurance before I let them bid on a job.
Oh, you have to, you know, my insurance will send it out. My insurance company, I got them almost on speed dial, people, you know, I'm like, do you need certificate insurance? They're like, you'll send, I'm like, yeah, I'll send it right away. I'll call them right now. They'll either email it to you or whatever, you know, they don't have a problem with it, you know?
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
go ahead, Rob, let me just, so I understand this. As a homeowner,
yes,
we want to basically say, look, going forward, if you were 50 feet from your curb line, you need a permit.
correct.
You need a permit. All tree companies, we have to identify them that we know of. There'll be others. There's new ordinance in this township. You need a permit within.
We don't have to notify anybody. It's just because the ordinance, I mean, if you don't know murder is murder and kill somebody, that doesn't mean you're excluded from being charged from it.
Yeah, but if we notify them,
you can warn them to begin with. And if they don't have they're supposed to have a business license with the township if they're working in the township. They're supposed to show their workman's comp and they're supposed to show their liability insurance.
And who's enforcing that?
What's that?
Who's enforcing that? So we have a list already.
The codes.
Yeah,
The codes guys should be doing it.
Well, that part I don't think you need to worry about. I think that's our job to enforce, that if there's any contractor working in the township, we'll make sure that they have a contractor's license and that they provided us a copy of their workers' comp and liability insurance. We do that now, even before this ordinance was put in place. So we'll continue to do that. I don't think you need to be so worried about that. I think the focus, as I see what you want to be looking at, particularly this evening, are talking about the things, maybe not the detail, but what are the things that you think from the ordinance that need more specific addressing, so that we can, over the next month and a half or 2 months, get everything in place. And we will, I'm looking here, I think that we could handle most of the permits if it's not involving, you know, if it's a homeowner coming in the front yard, they want to take down one tree. I don't see it as an issue. I think if they're coming and wanting to clear cut their front yard, I think we're going to make them come before you. I think if it's a developer who wants to clear off a whole piece of property, I think we want them to come and we want you to review it and look at it and see what they're planning in place of. I mean, there's a whole piece here that talks about all of that. And so, you know, going forward, now we've got some plans that have already been done that's probably not going to happen, but, you know, because they're in process today. I mean, I can't go back and make them follow back to this. But for new plans going forward, I think we definitely can, and we'll do that. And I think looking at it, you guys should have the opportunity to review the trees and look at what's happening and say, we don't want these species coming in. I mean, I think looking at this, you know, I think if you focused on what your duties were tonight, from this and came back and said, from our duties, here are the 5 or 6 things we want to look at in the ordinance to make changes to. I think the idea of saying from the curb line, whether you pick 35 feet or 50 feet, you know, I think that makes sense because that's something that everybody can live with. Either, you know, and you could say it's up to the front of the house or 35 feet, whichever is less, you know, I mean, so if their house is 10 feet from the roadway, it's the whole 10 feet. If their house is 100 feet, then it's only the 50 feet or 35 feet, whatever you set. And so we can work on that part if that's what you want to do. I think the real key, you know, when I look at some of your responsibilities are, is really talking about how you're going to do those responsibilities and whatever other changes you want to make in this to make it. Like you were talking about some heritage tree issues, you know, maybe 2 of you ought to take a look at the heritage tree section and really look at what the recommendation would be. How do we have somebody say that they have a heritage tree? I mean, the way I read it, I'm not sure anybody wants to claim they have a heritage tree, right? You know, and so, but how do we get it? So maybe we had talked about at one point, do we need to give some incentive for people that have heritage trees? You know, because if there's an incentive, maybe then you do it. And maybe we give you, I don't know. I don't know what the incentive is, but you know, we need to figure that out. And people who are more creative than me can maybe figure that out. But those are the kind of things that I think I would focus on as your group.
So how do you want that to happen? Should we talk about that now? Should we go point by point? There's 10 duties and then, or should we take this back and then work on it individually and then submit our comments to, you know, send an email out? I guess I don't know how the best way to do this. And then at the next meeting, or we could have an ad hoc meeting and discuss it.
Yeah, maybe. Do we have a disclosure requirement if 3 or 4 of us just get together on Zoom?
If at any time there's more than 3 of you, if there's 3 or more of you meeting, I have to advertise the meeting. If there's 2 of you that meet together, you can meet all day. I don't even need to know about it. But if you have 3 of you that meet at any point, if you remember when we were even doing the stuff on the side of the road and I said only 2 of you can do it at a time, your quorum is 3. So
Okay.
anytime that you cross that 3 limit, I have to make sure we at least advertise that you're meeting. You know, and we need to allow the public to have the opportunity to interact with you when you do that. Now, if you're going out and you're looking at heritage trees, I don't have to necessarily provide transportation for the public to go with you to every place, but I at least have to let them know that that's what you're doing, if that makes sense.
Well, not to be a Philadelphia lawyer, which in fact I am not. If I met with Pat and we went back and forth on some ideas and Carol met with Tom and they went back and forth and then we switched partners, is that still okay?
As long as you're not making a decision, like if you come in and you've had a discussion and you come back and you say, we've made a decision because the 4 of us have met individually and talked, you can't do that.
That's fine. I don't want to make a decision, but I'd like to at least to try to figure out what the parameters are and what might be acceptable.
I would recommend that you not necessarily meet with each individual in the group, but that maybe 2 of you meet, or maybe 2 of you meet, and then like because there's 5 to make sure everybody's participating. Somebody maybe meet with 2 different people. That's probably okay. What you don't want to do is that each one of you meets with each other all the way through, and then all of a sudden you come back and it looks like you've done something behind scenes. If the purpose is to really just come back and say, here's the 7 things that we need to talk about as a committee and make a decision on, I think that's fine.
Right. I see it as we would just have that be the next agenda item. The purpose would be is to have the recommendations for discussion on our next agenda. So
Yeah.
it's more focused so that we're not, having meetings like this where I'm tanking it and, taking us down a rabbit hole.
So, yeah, my suggestion would be that whether you do it in groups of 2 or whether you do it as individuals, is that you review the ordinance and you come up with the sections that you think are issues, that you feel that, we don't know what to do with. And so that we can, one, either I work with the attorney and we figure out what it is that we need to do, or 2, we look at, do we need to rewrite that section, or can it be just a policy? So like, for example, when Trish, when you brought up earlier the idea of periodically inspecting, I think that if you said as a committee that you just wanted to do it twice a year, that's fine. You don't necessarily have to change the ordinance to do that. So that if you missed one, it's not an issue that somebody could come back and say you had a dereliction of duty. And so that's the reason why the ordinance is probably a little broaderly written.
Okay.
It doesn't force you into something that, like this year would have been a tough year to do some of those things just because of COVID.
Right.
And so it's not that you're not wanting to do those things, it would just be hard. But if you come up with a policy and you say, here's our policies on doing this, here's our procedures for doing this. And even if you come back and say, look, we think that the township staff can approve any single tree and any tree up to 6, even, and we'll let them approve up to 6 trees being taken down on a property. We don't even want to see it. That's fine. Just let them do it. And, so we can work with that. Or parameters. You say, if a tree is dead, we don't ever need to see it. It doesn't matter what the tree is because it's dead. And the question then becomes, who determines that it's dead? That's the question.
Right. How do you enforce that? Because I got caught before down in Lower Merion taking down a tree, and I said it was a dead tree, and they're like, yeah, they're all dead. That's the, every time somebody takes down a tree, it's dead. That's their.
Well, I think the thing is that, if we require a permit and the person says that they believe the tree is dead, we go out and we look at it. And if we have a reasonable doubt, then we're going to pass it off to you as a team because you have the expertise. And we're going to have we're looking at a township arborist. So, it's those kind of things so that we have somebody. In fact, we just hired somebody he is an arborist. So that's going to help us. We hired him in our public works department. So I think we're going to have some benefit with some of those things for trying to address those things and looking at something and saying, yeah, this tree has to come down. Pete's been pretty good with that. We've used Pete to go out and just take a look and make some decisions. The other question comes down though, is like, this ordinance requires the township to have a permit to take down a tree. If I read it right. And so if we're required, are you okay with me having one of my staff review the permit and say it's okay, or do you want that coming back to you? And so those are the kinds of questions that I think need to be decided from a policy standpoint. The ordinance is written broad enough that it kind of gives you the big area that you're playing in. The policies then come back and say, how are we going to carry out the ordinance?
Yeah, I would like to have somebody look at all big trees. If a tree's over 60 feet tall, it takes a long time to get to that size, and it's taking in a lot of carbon dioxide and improving the air. So I think we ought to, have a procedure for large trees being taken down. But that's just me.
That would be a heritage tree, right?
Well, not necessarily. Not the way we've defined heritage tree.
No.
60 feet probably is getting close to that. I would think that most trees that are 60 feet probably are close to 36 inches.
And depending on what species it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, there'd be others that aren't.
Right.
Yeah.
I've seen 60-foot trees 10 inches around.
Yeah,
I've seen 100-foot trees 10 inches around.
yeah. So, I mean, I think that's my point. I'm thinking that we're gonna have to figure out if we're gonna do that, we have to figure that out.
Yeah. That was my point.
So it sounds like, Steve, you're saying that, the ordinance is supposed to be overarching, and then we should be developing step-down policies and procedures in order to fulfill that. I think,
And I'm sorry, and I'm not saying we don't maybe need to go back and change something in the ordinance. That's not what I'm saying. But if the ordinance gives you the latitude to do it, you may want to keep the latitude broad. If you really want to get more specific, we can change the ordinance to make it different.
okay.
Now, Steve, can you differentiate between residential and like a contractor, as in like builder, site work and stuff like that? Can you
And we
make two-
kind of have, if you look in the,
But I mean, there's not like you have to do one set of rules for everybody.
well, what I can't do, at least as I interpret like, if you're a property owner and once you've done the development, so like, for example, like I can't necessarily treat Apple, I just draw a blank. The Apple Leisure Services or whatever. they
Travel
are,
agency, right?
Yeah, travel
Yeah.
agency. Thank you. I just drew a total blank. I can't treat Apple's travel agency different than I'm treating another commercial project, right? Like I have to treat commercial all the same, and I have to treat residential all the same. And in some ways, depending on what we're doing, I may have to treat commercial and residential the same. Where if somebody's doing a land development and they're coming in, that's a whole different piece. I can have different rules for land development, even though, but an existing firm, existing building may have a different set that they're working with, in that process, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah, so what you're saying is if land development can be a different set of criteria than what, even though they have an office building, it's commercial, they want to take down a tree, it's in the right of way, they have to get a permit or whatever like that.
correct.
But if they're doing a land development plan, the rules can change to a whole different scope of work, a scope to what's in this ordinance.
Correct. Just
So-
like
so
if
you
somebody
can-
was coming in and doing a land development for a house, a single
Right.
home, if it was a true land development, like they were coming in and dividing their lot and doing that, you can then turn around and hold them to a full, like everybody who's doing land development's held to the same expectation.
Yeah, I wasn't too sure if it was like, if we wrote this made amendments to this ordinance, that it would apply to land development also, that if I don't know, township rules or state or federal rules, if you have to treat everybody the same,
You do, but you can say in land development, because typically in land development, there's a clearing.
right?
And you can say, if you're coming in and doing, even though like typically we're saying, look, we're mostly interested in a tree that's within 35 or 50 feet of the roadway. But a land developer comes in and, they've got a 50-acre lot and they're going to clear cut the entire lot. It's okay to say they have to come back with a certain number of trees.
All right, that makes
You
sense.
should have a plant plan and everything.
Correct. And we have that on the books today, and we review that already. And then this here more formalizes it a little bit more and gives you all a little bit more opportunity to be involved in the process.
Now on this ordinance, do we amend everything first, or we can make amendments at like tonight? Could we do like 50 yard from the curb edge to the 50 foot? Do we do that tonight, or do we like do the whole plan and then put it in as a final?
So we'll do whatever you guys really want to do. If you come back, my recommendation would be, like, let's say you want to do a full review. I would say do the review and let's try to do it all at one time, because we have to advertise every time we make a change. And
To this
so
ordinance.
for any ordinance.
Okay,
And so I'd rather not make a change every month to this ordinance, I mean, but if there's something that you're looking at that's a glaring problem and you say, look, if we don't change this, we can't move forward, then maybe we make that decision. But as long as we can move forward, I'd rather make most of our changes all at one time. And that's not saying you can't go back and make a change later, but it's just, it's more efficient. And I mean, because not only do we have to pay to advertise it, but then I have to pay the company that changes our ordinance in our ordinance book to change the ordinance. I mean, there's a lot of things that go to that.
all right.
Could I ask one question? Because I'm not, in going over the ordinance, I wasn't on page 12,
Yep.
19, under section B1A. I'm not sure what you mean by that.
12B1A. No person shall undertake the following activities.
No, activity resulting in the movement of earth or stripping of vegetative cover in excess of 300 cubic yards.
Yes.
I don't think, cubic yards is depth.
Yeah, I think it should be area,
Perfect.
not cubic yards.
But then as an area, it's really a very small area. It's like 20 by 15.
I think that's right. It doesn't take much to require a permit.
Okay, just so I'm clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know there's like a whole set of, I've done like water management plans, and if you get over like 250 square feet, or even like 1,000 square feet, it goes into like, you need engineering plans, you need site work plans, it's a whole different set of ball game that you got to get into. So that's why when you apply for the permit, you always say it's less than what the amount that you can actually disturb. You budget a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's really trying to get at if somebody's coming in and trying to strip land to do something, they want to make sure that nobody's, look, if you're putting on a small addition on the back corner of your house, and it may be able to get away without it. But if you were coming back in and adding a whole wing to your house, you may very well fall under it.
Yeah, I just didn't understand what you were what we were trying to get to.
That's usually what that means. Occasionally somebody will come in and want to like put in, like a pool, and they're going to turn around and scrape this whole area of land off. Well, I think then we probably want to have the question is, do they need to be replacing trees? Do they need, those kind of things?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So can I make a comment here?
Sure.
We seem to be all over the board tonight,
Yep.
right? So, I mean, I think we start, in my interpretation of what's going on here, we just take one section, residential. Who needs a permit? What do I have to do to get a permit? And just keep it simple and build on it. We're touching so many topics tonight. What are we really accomplishing other than maybe we set a setback of 35 to 50 feet, which we're not really going to do anything with yet until we go through the whole process. So we start off with residential. Who needs a permit? How do we inform them that they need a permit? Do we notify the tree companies?
Well, I would
Make
say
it simple as possible. Make it simple as possible.
it's hard to notify the tree companies.
Why? You already have them on township record as to who has insurance and who has a license in the town.
If they've actually done work in the township and been caught by the codes guy.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of people, trust me, I see a lot of tree guys come and go out of this township.
And they don't have permits.
Right, they don't have permits.
They never registered.
I don't know the names of them. I'm like, where did that truck come from? Every day you see another tree guy and it's like, oh my God, someone else started in business. It's like,
Yeah, but we got to start somewhere. So let's start with the people we know. And then from there, somebody enforce it. You see somebody, stop them.
Yeah.
well, that's what the code guy does.
Yep.
Let's make sure he does.
I mean, that's what he does. And he can inform the tree guy when he sees one,
the
and
new
he'll-
guys.
What's
What
that?
about the existing guys? The ones that are already on
The
the township.
existing guys, if they have, like, I know Springfield, the guy has a book.
But we're not in Springfield Square, and we don't have
What I'm
anything.
just saying, that I'm telling what Springfield does, like, I don't know if Steve, the codes guy, has like a list of the contractors there, or he can call back to the office, you know, if he doesn't have it in his book, that he can call back and ask the office staff to check and see if they actually have a license to work in the township or have the home improvement contractor's license or whatever, you know, but as long as this, you know, and if he does have a home improvement contractors and not registered with the township still needs his insurance information.
Correct.
They don't have to, he doesn't have to get a permit, not permit, but a
license.
He
a
needs a
license with the township, because the state supersedes it unless you're doing commercial work. Then it's like weird. That's
Yeah.
another thing Springfield likes to do. If you like if I work at Holy Cross Church down in Springfield, if I work at the rectory, it's considered residential, but if I work at the church, it's considered commercial. And they'll nail me every single year for like that $250 for the license fee. You know, it's like funny. So every time I pull a permit down there, I'm working at the rectory, you know.
Note to self, raise the cost of the permit or the license fee, $250.
Oh my God.
Holy cow, we're cheap.
So wait, so every tree company needs their license in this township, right? And that's enforced, and they have to renew it annually.
So if they do work just on a residential lot, I don't think they have to have one. I think it's as soon as they go off if you're doing it for an individual homeowner, it's not an issue. If you're doing it for a builder or you're doing it for a commercial project, you need one. So like if you go and take something off, you know, let's say I call you and ask you to come take a tree down on my property. You don't need to get a license for us, but you still need to give us the insurance. We still have to have record that your insurances are on file.
Okay. And is that enforced annually?
Yeah, that's enforced annually.
Okay, so we have a list. We have a list of tree companies, license.
Yeah, but again, if you,
insurance.
it's always harder on the ones that just do residential. They're the toughest ones. And typically we don't get them until somebody pulls a permit.
What's that insurance?
The insurance, because we don't know they're there until they, you know, how do I know you're doing anything?
Well, they've been here once, right?
If they've been here once, then they're covered. Yes.
Right. So
That's if the codes guy stopped him. If the codes guy goes by and sees the person doing a job and doesn't recognize the truck and hasn't stopped them before, then
right.
Then he
I'm
will,
just trying
you know,
to get an email out to everybody to notify them. This is new. This is what
we can try to do that.
Here we go. We have a shade tree commission. This is what you need. There's always going to be people coming and going. That's great. But once we've got them, they've been notified, it's rolled out. And from there, we pick off the new guys that there's no record of. Right. So that's step one. Get them on board. It's rolled out. They know there's a shade tree commission now. You need permits for certain parameters.
Is there a way to use is there like a banner or here's what's new in the township section on the website, the county or the township website, that maybe we can make that announcement to, or maybe on the building permits page or something like that, where if people are just trying to get information that's more readily known or visible for folks to.
Yep. I'm making
So, okay. So let's start off with the rollout, right?
Yeah.
On that topic, let's roll it out. How are we rolling this out? Let's get a few bullets out there. How we're going to roll this out, and then enforce it, implement it,
Mm-hmm.
both for commercial, residential, homeowners, whatever it is. Right. So let's focus on. So it's already 7:36. We've been all over the board. Let's focus on how are we rolling this out? Banner and township website, right? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, or whatever in the what's new section.
Yep.
Okay. That's good. Then how are we notifying the existing tree companies that are already on record in the township? Can we email them?
We can do that.
Right.
So is there something that what do you want in that? I mean, like, what are you
Same-
hoping?
As a new policy in Newtown Square
Did you,
is.
you want us to send them a copy of the ordinance?
I
Nah, they won't read
don't
it.
think we're ready for that, are we? It's kind of
Well,
generic.
yeah, I mean, you got, it's enacted, so I mean, it's existing as it is now until we make amendments to it.
Then we could send it out. We'd send it out and say,
I
hey,
mean, you can email it to them.
Well, if we're going to review it, maybe we should review it before we send it out. I
right,
mean, at one point, we we're talking
we
about.
roll it out January 1st or even February, whatever it is. At least we can get some things organized, because right now we're just all over the board.
Well, that's because we started with what's wrong with the ordinance. And so that's sort of, that really opened it up. So, but I think that I like your approach for sure. Because I think you hit on the main points. How do we get the information out? How do we make it clear to anyone, residential or commercial or contractors, what they're supposed to do? What the ordinance means, how it applies to them, and then how they're expected to comply. And those can be tiered off because it's going to be a little different for residential, new residential versus existing residential, commercial, existing, new commercial, and then developers, and then if you have a heritage tree. And I agree with Steve. I think that we might want to take another look at that heritage tree, because I think it's almost like a disincentive in order to, claim, hey, I have this tree on my property. And then maybe there's ways that we should think about incentivizing, and then that, or giving.
Yeah, they could take a $200 credit on their real estate taxes if they have a heritage tree. That would
Oh,
get some.
I got a lot of them. I got a lot of heritage trees at my house then. Is that per tree?
I don't know.
Not sure we can do that.
Yeah.
There might be some legal issues with that one.
It's just a thought.
I think we'll let's table the heritage thing for a while. Let's get the rollout done, and
Yeah.
and
I
what
agree.
makes the easiest, most efficient way to roll this out where it's easily understood by.
I think they're probably, I'm hearing what you're saying, Tom, and I think that's right. I think there's a couple things. One is I think us getting information out, but I think the thing that probably needs to be decided before we send out information, just so we let people know, if you're comfortable with the township making the decision about permits, where does that line change that it goes to you? And the reason for that is, look, if we're making an evaluation about a permit, we're probably going to do it within, a week at the most. Where if it's coming back before you and you're only needing once a month or once every other month, that becomes an issue for how to get that done. And so I think that, people need to understand that, because all of a sudden now my lead time is a lot longer. If if X is happening and I need to go before the tree commission, then I need to plan that much more in advance.
Yeah.
And it may be that you say, for right now, we're only going to look at things with land development. Or it may be that you're going to say, we only want to look at trees that are greater than 6 inches in diameter.
Yeah.
Whatever that is, that's the thing that we need to determine.
As to who requires a permit.
Well, I'm not saying when it requires a permit. It's going to require a permit based on the ordinance.
Okay.
What might be the difference is when it goes before you versus when the township staff is making the decision. If that makes sense.
I
get
would
it.
say whatever designated a heritage tree, because we don't want to be looking at every permit. I can tell you that right now, because if they start sending in permits, these tree guys start getting permits, some of these bigger companies can, if they're doing a lot of work in the township, they could have 10 permits per week, and I mean, and it's blanket that, there's no question on what it is, but they're required to have a permit to do it. So for us to look at it, then having the codes guy look at it or somebody else look at it in the township on the public roads crew or whatever like that, whoever it is, wouldn't be a problem to me. You know what I'm saying?
So
Because obviously you want
involved after 15-inch diameter?
No, that's small. No, I'm telling you, the heritage tree is the only thing we should, as a shade tree commission, if someone wants to take down this big, beautiful oak in the front of their house for no reason at all, and they apply for the permit, we should have to say yes or no on it. I mean, but otherwise, if you're taking down, a couple spruce trees in front of the house or something like that, or, doing whatever, or like re-landscaping the front of your house, or, because of different issues of whatever it is, they're having erosion or whatever, we shouldn't be, I mean, that's not really in our scope of what we should be doing, as I think.
I can agree with that.
I mean, there's a lot of legwork and a lot of lead time. Like, I mean, I can understand someone at Heritage Tree, it take us a month to get around to saying yes or no on it. But, like I said, if someone's going to be taking down a maple tree in front of their house that's, roots are cracking the sidewalk or this or that, or, it's a trip hazard, it's just destroying their lawn or getting in their sewer, I don't think we should have to approve that, because you can have some of those maples could have that a big caliber, but I don't think we should be involved with it. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not, it's cut through the people are going to cut it down, that there's a problem why they want to do it anyway, either it's dying or split or whatever, we shouldn't,
So they need a
say
permit.
yes anyway.
What if they come in and say, I just want it down? Do you want, so the question is, because we occasionally get that. Well, just like somebody says, I just don't want the tree near my house, period. It's too close to my house. And
Well, that's it. It's too close. They want it down because it's too close. Either branches are falling off or whatever. Is it their right to do it? They own the house. Yes. Okay. Are you going to deny them because of it?
But
do you make it that? Do you make them replant a tree? Yes.
Okay.
That's what Springfield does. If you take down that tree, you're going to put another one back.
Okay.
That's fair.
That's what it is. That's why they want it, because they don't want people open front yards in Springfield. They want everybody to have a street tree.
But that has nothing to do with us involved. That's just something the township has to require and take care of, right? They follow through on that.
Well, yeah, but we have to approve a list of the shade tree.
That's another topic.
Tree. You know what I mean? That's part of the ordinance.
But that's another topic for another day, Rob. That's another topic for another day. That we need a list of trees that we find acceptable to plant in this township, right? So if somebody's going to take down a tree because they don't want it 4 feet from their house, which I get, you have to plant another tree. Here's the list. But why? We don't need to be involved with that. We just need to come up with a list.
Right. It should be one for one, not like in this one part of the ordinance is, if you have a 36, you got to put 3 mature shade trees, which
Understood.
I don't agree upon.
Understood. That's a topic for another day. We'll table that one for again another day. We do have to come up with that list. Let's just get the rollout. And when do we get involved?
I think that's really key. Because I think Steve's right. I think it's like, what trees do we want to look at? Is it? And
I agree with Rob. Heritage trees to start for now, right? Anything outside of that can be a township decision, right?
Well, we
I agree.
need a working definition of what we might consider a heritage tree, I think.
In the book.
Well, it's 36 inches or more, right? A DBH?
Yeah, it's 30 greater than 36 dBH.
Yeah, I think so. That's right. That's a heritage tree.
Boy, that's a big goddamn tree.
No, it's
And then
not.
we have to identify them. We don't even know where they are.
Yeah, that was my point before. It's like we don't even know where they are. So
Right.
how are we going to track them? Is there availability on the township's GIS system in order to have those identified in a layer that's then accessible to us, and we can see it on a map so that we can go check them out if we have to?
So the answer is, can we do that? We can do that. I mean, that's not the issue. The issue is actually doing it. Creating the layer is the easy part in regards to, I can add a layer to my mapping system and say, we're going to do all trees on a map. And we've actually started that for township trees that are on township property. Particularly, we did that with our ash trees, particularly the ones that we're saving. You know, we said we want to know where they are. We took a
GPS.
GPS measurement, and we've got that in our system. We've started to load that up, or we are loading that up. I think it's right now on a different mapping system that we were using, but we're going to transfer it over to our just main thing. So that we can do, and that's not the problem. The problem would be determining where all these trees are. It's a lot easier to say that's what we're going to do. It's a lot harder to go do it. You know, it's getting somebody out there, and you know, I may have one in my backyard. I mean, I can walk on my yard to go look at it because I'm the owner of my property, but the township doesn't have the right just to walk on my yard and go take a measurement or go take the GPS coordinate reading for the GIS system to know where it is, if that makes sense.
It does, but we could start off with the ones that are visible within ways.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's a start.
Absolutely.
Right? And then from there, we can build on it.
It's all legwork. I mean,
It is all legwork.
The two women that are doing it now are going around looking and presenting them that Leonard said earlier, you know, they're already out there. I mean, that's what you need, people to like go out and do it, not so much us. They can come to us and say, this is it. Then we review what they came with, you know, but, you know, or if they, you know, maybe if we do want to help, but otherwise, you know, I think it's all legwork. I mean, you can do all your satellite stuff you want, but, you know, it's all legwork still, you know, walking around and.
So should we one of us volunteer to get in touch with Cindy and Sheila and find out what information they have and how to coordinate with the EAC on this? Because I don't know who has the charge for this. It sounded to me like they just started it, but the way that I'm sort of reading the ordinance, I think it's going to fall over in our committee's responsibility, right? I'm not sure.
Ultimately it does.
Right. So
they need to submit it to us, probably me, right? And then I will distribute it to everybody else, and then we can review. Right.
And then how does a homeowner, if they think that they have a heritage tree, how would they submit it to the township? Do we have a procedure for that, or is that something we need to come up with too?
We need to come up with one.
Okay.
We don't have one right now, but I mean, it may be, we can keep it pretty simple. You know, I'm thinking that we could just say that there's a simple form that's filled out, and you know, that just says we think we have a heritage tree, and we authorize the township to come on our property to take the GIS coordinates, review the tree, make sure it meets the requirements, you know, that kind of thing.
And why would they want to do that? I'm
not sure.
Right.
I mean, the thing that I'm saying is, I think that's one of the challenges with the ordinance is there's, you know, it's, and this was a challenge from the start. It's like, we want to protect heritage trees from the township's perspective. But right. if it's on my property, I'm not sure I want it to be labeled as a heritage tree, because there's no gain to me other than I can't do anything with it when I need to do something with it. And, you know,
right.
Well,
so is there some way to make it so it, you know, is there something that we can do in recognition? Is there something that we do, you know, maybe do we say we'll provide a plaque for every heritage tree? I don't know what, you know, I don't know what the thing is.
I think we put a blurb out there that we are protecting our heritage trees.
Yeah.
Neighbors will be the best policing source, because I know in other jobs we've been on, when trees are coming down in other townships, they're on them right away. And township shows up, you're taking down a huge tree, you have a permit. You're not allowed to do this tree. This is a heritage tree, which is not.
So one of the incentives that I see is like, you know, how PICO was coming through and cutting down cutting down a lot of trees, and you saw the sign, save our trees. You know, I mean, maybe there's just an extra little layer of protection if you have your tree and it could be subject to that, but I would imagine that it would get cut anyway because of the public
Yeah,
need.
there's nothing I can do to keep Pico from cutting a tree. Absolutely nothing.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'll volunteer our tree, because we have a big old oak that I really think is greater than 36 dBH. And it's like right next to the road. And so for me, I think it would be, because I wouldn't want the township to come in and cut it down for.
Yeah.
So what we've done in the past, if Pico's coming in and clearing lines or township work's being done, we help them and then we bring in our arborist to let them trim it so it's not just hacked. Because a lot of people, they don't really care. They're just limb that tree straight up.
Right.
FedEx isn't even an issue with them. So we stop them. We'll take care of the tree. They'll have somebody on site to make sure it's cleared properly, but it's pruned in such a way that it's not destroyed aesthetically. That's easy enough to do. But again, we're
I mean, we could use our tree as a test case to see how.
We go through the process.
Well, Pico is being proactive with ash trees right now, unless they're doing upgrades on the system. I mean, they're cutting down ash trees. I mean, I've told 3 or 4 of my customers, they're like, we want this tree that's dying. I says, call Pico. They're being very proactive, and they're like, thank you. And I'm saving my customers some money. I do work for them, so I don't care, but, they are cutting just like they did down on Goshen Road. They probably took down 50 trees down on Goshen Road down there, down from Earl's Lane, a couple weeks ago. And, but it's ash trees they're taking down for the most part, unless they're doing line upgrades where they're putting new poles in, setting poles, and the trees are in the way, but otherwise they're just touching ash trees right now for the most part. Or if it's dead. I mean, they will cut an all dead tree down if it's overhanging their wires. So.
all right. Let's move on from that topic. Let's stay. Where are we going? Let's keep these points going here. So far, we're going to do the rollout. We're going to decide when we get involved, which is heritage tree only, right? And is that enough topics for tonight, or do we need to discuss a few other things? And we're allowed to get together in groups of 2 and discuss this, and then at our next meeting.
Yeah, so I think maybe the homework should be is that everybody spends time with the ordinance. And if you want to get together with somebody else and talk it through just to make sure you're sounding right, is come up with your list of things that you think that are 1, either questions, or 2, things that you think need to be changed. And then let's create that list. Let's put it together. And, maybe we don't cover them all in one meeting, but maybe we cover 4 or 5 in a meeting and make a decision on them. And then we keep working till we get through all of them so that you feel confident. And then we'll make a recommendation for the change in the ordinance. The other thing that I would say is that I would for sure spend some time and look at your responsibilities and duties, which I think is on page 7, if I remember right. Starts on page 7. And I would go through that and I would say from this, what are the things that we need to, what do we think are the 5, 6, 7, 8 action steps that need to happen? What do we want to get done in the next 3 months? What do we want to get done in the next 6 months? What do we want to get done in the next year? I mean, there's a lot to do here. I don't expect it, I don't think anybody's expecting you to get it all done tomorrow. I think the key is, you're making progress and we're telling the board, here's the direction you're headed and here are the steps that you're taking to get to where you want to be.
Okay, and Steve, I can outline that and send it to everybody. The guys, how about these bullet points at our next meeting?
Yep.
Come up with ideas. Can we go back for them and say, hey, this is what we're going to discuss? I can email everybody on that, right?
Correct.
Not making any decisions. We're just talking about things we want to discuss.
If all you're doing is putting your agenda together and just saying, these are the 7 items that we want to talk about. Is there anything else anybody wants to add to the agenda? That's fine.
Okay, and I'll include you on these to make sure I don't.
Yeah, please do. If I think you guys are crossing a line, I'll tell you.
Okay.
Is there a way that we can get a copy of the ordinance in Word?
I have it. It
Word?
was given to us. Yeah, I downloaded.
I have it in PDF, I think.
Yeah, we got it.
But you can't convert it over?
I probably could, but I just didn't know if they had it handy.
I'm sure we do somewhere. Let me find out and I'll see if I can get it for you.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe Susan.
Somebody's got it. It was in Word before it got put in PDF.
I was just thinking it might be easier for us to go through it and make
Yeah.
comments on it if we handle it and track changes, you know?
If you want to do it that way, we can get it to you.
We can, but that, I guess, Trish, that may be, again, another meeting for, that's a long process to go through this whole ordinance. Step by.
And again, what I would say is if you just if you know if you know that you want to talk about 20 items, and maybe some of them are 5 minutes, you just talk about it and you move right on. You don't need to spend a lot of detail on it.
Right,
Others
okay.
of them may take a long time, but if you know what they are and you set a priority to go through them, then you just know you're working through them. And if you think it's going to take you 2 years to go through them all, then maybe we do turn around and update the ordinance after you get halfway through. And then we'll update the ordinance again after you get the rest of the way through.
Right, okay.
Okay.
I'm going to send out an outline of what I think we could talk about. Anybody can add to it for our next meeting.
Right.
And we can go from there. And that's a step of completing a topic and putting it behind us, as opposed to just open discussion. Everybody good with that?
Mhm.
Okay. All right, I'm good with that. Anybody else have anything else to add? No?
How soon do we need to come up with a list of approved trees?
That's probably, if I would say one of your priorities, that should be it. Only because that way, when somebody says, I'm taking down a tree, and we say you need to replace it with a tree, I have something that I can tell them that these are the trees that we allow.
Okay,
Right, we do, that was part of the things that I'd sent out. That was one of our items to discuss.
was it? Okay.
Yeah, it was 9.2.
Do we have to do that as well for the invasives?
I think so. I think we at least,
It doesn't matter, because it's not, it's on a list, you can't plant it.
Good point.
Well, I'm just looking at the ordinance and it says that there's a list for, in the duties,
What page?
establish a list of invasive species exempt from protection under this ordinance.
yeah, so that's another thing that we need to do. So one is what you want people planting back. The other thing would be types of trees that you don't care if they take out,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yep.
So that, if it's a, I don't know, I had a tree on my property that everybody told me was a weed. I didn't know what it was. And it was, I mean, it was big. It was, probably about like that big around. And I kept being told it was a weed, but it provided shade and I just left it. But, but at the same time, it is one of those things that if people are taking things out and it is considered an invasive, I don't know that we want them to have a permit for that. We just want them to replace it. That's all.
So it's invasive, we don't have to replace it, right?
I would argue that we still want them to replace. I mean, I think anything that's taken down, we would want replaced personally, but
Okay.
I don't know if we'll require that for everywhere, but we should at least require it if it's in the front of, if it falls within the, if it would fall within the category of shade tree.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. We could all come up with ideas. All right, so, all right. We pretty much talked about all our topics tonight. Are we good?
Oh, I just have one question. So if we wanted to start, if we had ideas on procedures to fulfill some of these things, should we go ahead and start capturing that? Or do we want to wait? I mean, not say to discuss it like during
Tonight.
the meeting, but we could just do that on our own if we want.
Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. If you come back and you have a procedure that you think is good, what I would suggest is maybe if somebody's doing that they shoot it over to me, particularly if they're wanting the township to do something, because I may be able to say, that's never going to work. We can't do that. Or, yep, we can take care of it. That'll work fine.
Okay.
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 And I have one more thing. I was contacted, well, actually just happened through Facebook, actually. I got in contact with a person who's on the Shade Tree Commission for Media, and they're having a new committee too. And she wanted to talk and just kind of discuss what they were doing and kind of, talk, kind of, I guess, figure out what we're doing. Is there any problem with that?
Who was it again?
It's a lady that is on the Media Shade Tree Commission. Or
No,
board.
that's not a problem.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as it's only two of you, if it ends up being three of you, then now you've got a quorum. I mean, if the purpose is just sharing information, it's probably not such a big deal. But if you got to just be careful. If you say you're going to go to an educational thing, that's probably fine. All five of you could go if it's purpose of education. But the minute that you start talking about township business or township trees, then I need to make sure it's advertised. We need to make it a public meeting, and you have to have the opportunity for the public to make comment.
I think what this lady was wanting to do was to see how maybe we can better coordinate
Sure.
between, media and us. So,
Sure.
and
No, I think that's a great start. We'll probably want to talk about that. We probably want to consider doing that with all of the shade trees committees that are at least adjacent to the township.
okay. And I can report out, maybe Tom, you can put that down as an agenda item. I'll give a really short summary of the discussion.
With the neighboring township?
Mm-hmm. Media.
Yep. Got it.
Do you need me to give you her name, Steve?
No, only once you've had the meeting.
Okay.
When you report back.
All right.
I'll put it in the agenda, Trish, for next time.
All right, great.
All right. Okay. So, Steve, we didn't really discuss anything we need to vote on, right?
I don't think so. Not tonight. I had made a note. At some point, you've got to make a formalized decision between 50 and 35 feet, if that's what you want to do to change that for the purpose of from the curb line or from the edge of the road. That decision needs to be made. I'll work with George, starting to see if I can find out what the average distance is, just so that gives you an idea. If most of them are 25, if you want to say 35, that probably works. If most of them are 35, we may want to say 50.
All right, so let's put that on our next agenda, because it's something we can think about, pair up in groups of two and discuss it if we want.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't suggest making a decision tonight. I think you just need more information.
Right, okay.
It would be really helpful to know what the average is.
Yeah.
And how, I would imagine that this right-of-way thing is a common issue. So it'd be interesting to see how it's handled in other aspects of permitting within the township.
Yeah, we have a big issue of right of way because it's not consistent. That's one of the biggest things we struggle with.
Well, is that something that maybe the new ordinance or who's revamping whatever the
zoning ordinance?
Yeah. Is that?
It doesn't fall under that necessarily. This one's, it does, but it has to do with what was done in the original deeding of the road. And so we're trying to go back and go through all of them now. And George has had the wonderful joy of going through and doing that as our public works director. And you ought to see, we have thousands of deeds because it would be easy if every road was just one deed, but it's not. It's because it's a different section. It's between this section and this section, and it's a deed, and this section and this section is a deed.
Oh.
And so there's a lot of them out there.
How do you know if you're on a county road versus a city road, and are there township roads?
So in our township, there's basically three road classifications. They're either a state road, which is like 252, Goshen, St. David's, Bishop Hollow, and I'm missing something, Bishop Hollow, St. David, Gradyville, between Bishop Hollow and Providence or the township line in Gradyville between 252 and Media Line. Media Line Road is a state road. I think I'm missing one, but that's the main ones. Then almost everything else is a township road.
Okay.
And then there are some roads that are private streets that people drive down and they think it's a township road, but it's really a private street.
So that would be in some of the developments that might have like,
All Listener.
Well, Listener's all private streets, but
Yeah.
also like if you drive through the Heights, when I say the Heights, does everybody know where I'm talking about? Do you know where, like right here, we're at the Township building, the community that's right behind us,
yeah.
that community between us and 3, that's called the Heights. And that community, there's probably maybe about a 1/6 of the roads are private streets. And it's like between this block and this block, it's private, but on the other block, it's not. I mean, it's a mess. And the same thing happens in the Florida Park. If I say Florida Park, if you know where that is, Florida Park is the area that's off of, it's kind of down towards, it's the last subdivision kind of area. It's between Campus Boulevard and where the Subaru dealer is. There's a area there off to the, what would be the south of 3. And then the same thing is true of the Avenues, which is off of Media Line Road. There's some roads back there that are considered private, that are not, a lot of your HOAs are private. Like I live in Hunter's Run, all of that's private.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Are we good?
Yeah, and if you have a question on that, that's on the website and I can guide you to that if you want to really look at that.
Yeah, I would be interested, just
Okay.
out of morbid curiosity.
All right. So then if that concludes the meeting, we can make an motion to adjourn, right?
Yep.
All right. And at least 2 people to say aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Aye.
I
Right.
never have anybody say no on that one, hardly ever. So.
Oh, we're going on, we're on, what are we on? Almost an hour and 40 minutes.
So here's what I would like to say is thank you all. This is, you probably have this is where it's the hardest, is kind of getting started, laying the groundwork. Once you do that, it's going to get much better for you. And I want to thank you for sticking kind of with it and working through that. And I wish you all a Merry Christmas and enjoy your holidays, and we'll see you in the new year. Are you okay with me scheduling it like the second week in January? I think I can do that.
Mhm.
If that works.
Sure. The
Okay.
Wednesday, like the 13th?
We'll keep it on a Wednesday night for right this moment. and
Sure.
At least get you started again.
Sure.
Do we want to also, you mentioned that it was easier if we do multiples. Do you want to do February as well?
What I'm going to do is I'm going to just get you started. I think I'm going to want to move you to a different night if it works for this group, only because this is usually my one night at home. And so if I can move it to that, if we can move you to one of the nights that I'm already here, that would be great. If not, then we'll keep it where it is. But for now, we'll just do one and then we'll get started. And I have to do a full advertisement in January anyhow.
Okay.
So after we meet on the 14th, we'll do it. We'll probably lay it out for the entire year.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that works.
All right. All right.
All right, guys. Well, thank you, Steve. Thanks for hanging in there and helping us.
Sure enough. Thank you all. I appreciate your work.
Sure. Thanks, guys.
Happy holidays.
Happy
Merry
holidays.
Christmas.